Hello everyone, this is Lifeguard. We're going to be reacting to Jordan Peterson and Piers talking about the Ukraine and Russian crisis. Let's get into it.
Next week, but on the day that Putin threatened nuclear war on the West, I had to ask Jordan Peterson for his analysis on the war in Ukraine. His response was as grave as it was startling. That's the world's most famous psychologist, who began by asking for his view on Vladimir Putin as a man.
As a man.
Well, he's a lot more like everybody else than anyone thinks. You know, the notion that he's Hitler or Stalin, that's just foolish.
Yep, and that's basically because there's a little bit of kind of that conquering power, that, frightened. The thing is with it is everyone is the same. Everyone's very similar. We have fear, anger, emotion, hate, jealousy, envy. We want to be the top dog. We've all got it in us, and Putin's just kind of an amplified version of that, in my opinion. And so are a lot of leaders as well.
I don't see any evidence for that at all. I mean, first of all, Hitler and Stalin were very singular types, and there's a bit of Hitler and Stalin in everyone, so, there's some truth.
Yep, you said it there. There's a bit of a Hitler and Stalin in everyone, and not in like the racist way. I think a lot of people can get out of that, but if you really dive deep into your emotions, such as disgust or hate or things of that nature, you'll realize that if you push those to the extremes and you're completely unconscious about it and you just go along with it to the very end, you'll see how bad it can become. And Jordan Peterson says that very well here.
So now maybe there's more in the typical Russian leader.
A bit of Hitler in everyone? Really?
There's more than a bit.
Really?
Oh. Yep, Hitler is very much just like us in the terms of the same emotions, the same feelings. And I'm not saying, like I said before, it's racism or anything like that. It's more these intense feelings we get just taken to far, far extremes. I mean, if you put anger, for example, when you're very angry, imagine taking that emotion with complete unconsciousness and following it through fully, over and over again, never restricting yourself, not stopping it. That emotion, that energy can be a massive, massive destructive force.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, why would have Nazism spread the way it did? People think, well, that's all top down. It's not top down. There's a part of people that are all these people who informed on Kate Birbelsing.
Well, didn't Goebbels say that the way to get vast numbers of people to go along with what you want to do is to terrify them?
Well, it's not even just terrifying them. Like that's taking fear to an extreme. But if you imagine like riots and like Black Lives Matter and all these massive kind of movements that have come across, they're all fueled by collective anger or collective hate or collective unrest, and that built up enough explodes, and it comes out in very destructive and harmful ways if you don't have the consciousness and the self-control or awareness of escalation to kind of rein yourself in and look at things from a more analytical and obvious perspective, where if I do this, it's going to cause a lot of negative outcomes.
Yeah, you
hold a grip of terror over them.
Oh yeah, but
and in a way, that's what Putin's now doing with the Russian people, where he's going back now into a position of they're all trying to get us, they want to attack us, they want to take us over. He's terrifying his people to rally support for what at the moment is a conflict he has started, which is not going the way he assumed.
He's terrifying his people, probably because he is terrified himself. People think like, oh, Putin's this massive, big, evil guy, and he's got no feelings. He's probably terrified as well that his people are dying. He's probably terrified that his people are under distress and struggling and being killed and maimed in a battle, and he's kind of at the head of it. He's probably terrified. He's probably feeling an intense amount of fear and like he's being backed against the corner. And I'm not like pro-Putin, pro-Biden, pro-West, right, like left. It doesn't matter. You have to understand these are people, and the way that they're reacting is very human. It's not like inhumane. It's very much a part of us and how we would react if we were pinned against a wall with a gun to our head and seeing the people that we love, which is Putin's country, die. We will come across as very scared ourselves, and out of that fear or terror, that anger, probably a lot of anger as well. Imagine the outcome. I mean, he's sending people in, and he's getting more and more paranoid and scared that he's going to attack. It's like a dog being put back into a corner. Very same emotions.
Well, the most, what would you say, the wisest commentators on totalitarian states, like Solzhenitsyn, and many psychological commentators, Jung was a good example of that, made a very straightforward case that you can't have a totalitarian state unless every single person is willing to lie about everything all the time. And you can think about that as top down because the leaders lie too. And they also enforce punishments if you don't lie. But then you can also think about it, the totalitarian spirit is replicated at every level of the society. And so in a truly totalitarian state, husbands lie to their wives and parents lie to their children. And the totalitarian state is actually the grip of the lie. And so, and people will certainly go along with that. I mean
they'll go along with it not only because like they're probably scared for punishment, but because everyone else is doing it. I mean, if the world didn't go along with government and jobs and like working like your life away and slaving away, if people are all just like, no, we're not doing that, it would stop. Obviously it would stop. But because there's a push in that direction, there's so many people and kind of connecting forces, and it's all like, oh yeah, this is just what we do, this is how it is, this is, you know, what happens, and this is just how it goes. If it wasn't like that, and people would start standing up, and kind of the new consciousness of the new people would come up and make it clear to people that this isn't a way of living life, then slowly it would change. But because you're in a minority and everyone else is doing something, you want to, as a human, you want to fit in. You don't want to be left out. So it's hard to go with your gut feeling.
We're seeing that emerge here with cancel culture. It's like lie,
yes,
or else.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, well.
And the Russian people will be bombarded all the time with state media propaganda.
Yep, lie or else. This woman's beautiful and she's this size of a house and she's probably got diabetes. Look at this brave, beautiful woman. Now, I'm sure that woman is beautiful. I'm sure, like, maybe underneath all of the pain and suffering and weight and disability she's put on herself, maybe she's beautiful. I'm sure she's got a beautiful soul, but physically that's unhealthy, and there's a reason it's unattractive, because it shouldn't be something that people aim to be or aim to achieve. It should be something that's disdained, and like, don't go near that, or don't do this, because it brings with it not only lower mobility but risk of heart disease, risk of failure, like heart failure, risk of strain, chronic strain, and diabetes, endless problems. So it's obviously made to be unattractive for a reason. And I'm not saying I'm going to be honest, I like a bit bigger women, I like a bit kind of bigger, thicker, fuller women. But with obesity, it needs to be reined in. It's gotten absolutely ridiculous.
And we'll be buying into a lot of what Putin is saying.
Yeah.
How does this war end, do you think?
We're going to find out this winter. Well, I know what I would do in his shoes. I'd wait till the first cold snap and shut off the taps.
Right.
Well,
because
of course he's going to do that.
He's got the control over the energy.
Of course he's going to do that. He's already warned the West with his insistence that maintenance problems were necessary and the pipelines had to be shut down.
Do you think he will use a nuclear weapon?
If necessary.
That was you can tell that was the question Piers was itching for this whole time.
He'll use a tactical battlefield weapon.
Even
yes.
if it starts World War III?
It won't. Probably.
Why? Because we wouldn't respond?
What's in it for us?
If you let him do it and get away with it, where does that end? Then you are into a hit analogy.
There's you can get yourself in a situation, no problem, where there's no good outcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the war is, isn't it? It's a very good explanation for war in general. When people are going to die either side, you might gain some land, but you're still killing people, oftentimes your own people, by sending them into their deaths. Like, that's obviously not a good outcome for either side. And it's that power and the corruption that kind of hurts people.
We're trying to do that right now on every front we can possibly imagine. We can easily get ourselves in a situation where it's hell this way and hell that way.
Well, imagine what the Ukrainians and the Russians are feeling in the war. It's probably hell everywhere they look.
That's highly probable.
Well, should the Ukrainians give the Russians anything? When I was over there recently interviewing President Zelensky, what I was struck by was everybody I met in Kyiv, the capital city, were utterly resolute. Don't give them an inch of our land. Yeah,
well, I can't speak to that because I don't know what the preconditions for peace might be.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is very hard. If someone's got a gun to your head and they're saying, give me everything you've got, you're inclined to say, okay, well, here you go, because if you don't, my life's over. But that's kind of happening in a bigger sense. Like, if Russia's trying to destroy an entire country, it's very hard with a metaphorical gun to your head to to just say, no, we're not with this. But Ukrainians have, and they've held strong, which is very admirable and brave. But again, either side of this is just going to cause death and murder and unconsciousness, and it's not good.
But I do know that naive notions that the Russians are going to lose somehow, or that we're going to win, I just don't understand. I don't understand that. Well, what do you mean we're going to win? What are we going to win here exactly?
Well, I guess a victory would be that the Russians retreated from Ukraine.
For the Russians to retreat from Ukraine, I believe, would take so much out of Ukraine's sovereignty and individuality. So they've got, things like they're not allowed to join NATO, which is, again, puts them in a kind of vulnerable position as well with Russia already, even though NATO is helping. It's a very kind of hard question to answer what the best outcome and the best kind of forward path is.
With Ukraine in ruins.
Right.
Well,
Okay,
fine. That's a hell of a victory. Like, I think Putin could manage that, because I think he could tell his people, and I think they might buy it. It's like, we accomplished our objective. We devastated Ukraine and we kept it out of the hands of the West. And that's not great. It's not what we had hoped for, but it's better than the alternative. And I think they would buy that. And I think when Putin went into Ukraine, I thought a bunch of things, which I made a YouTube video about that. People criticized like mad. I thought, okay, well, what's happening here? Oh, I see. His end game for failure is that Ukraine is left in a smoking ruin. Oh, that's a victory. So,
having the death and obliteration of an entire nation as a clause for victory is a very dangerous thought process.
Then he can lose with impunity.
Right.
So how can we win? We can't win against Vladimir Putin anyways, because you cannot win against someone you cannot say no to. Period. And we can't say no to Putin because we sold our soul for his oil and gas. And we...
Yep, we're very, very reliant on Russia for everything, oil, gas, and plenty more, which is very scary, but that's kind of how politics works. I'm sure the reasoning at the time was sound, and they thought that obviously it wouldn't escalate to war and nuclear war and Russia going into Ukraine with all this force, but I guess that's just how politics has played itself out here.
We did that to elevate our moral stature in relationship to saving the planet. And so here we are, facing a very dire winter, hoisted on the petard of our own foolishness and moral presumption. We're saving the planet. We'll see. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it to me. And this is the most catastrophic issue here. Assuming that we're facing an environmental crisis of planetary proportions, which is not something I buy, by the way. Assuming we are, well, then I would imagine that you would put in place measures that would ameliorate that problem instead of exacerbating it. But all the measures you're putting in place are actually making the environmental problem worse.
And also, with Zelensky saying things and asking NATO to preemptively nuclear strike Russia, how is that going to make anything better? That's, again, the fear from the Ukrainian side coming out, which is obvious. It's just fear, against anger against anger. You're going to do this first, well, I'm going to do this, and it's not going to go anywhere.
So how is that even
anywhere positive? I mean, it may go somewhere very, very bad and dark, which I hope it doesn't for the sake of humanity, but we'll see how things pan out.
Vaguely acceptable. And I look at that and I think, oh, I see. It's just like George Orwell said about middle-class socialists 50 years ago. It's not that you love the planet, it's that you hate humanity. So, well, have at her, boys and girls, and we'll see what happens this winter. And it's very terrifying to me, especially here, because your energy prices have gone way out of control, and that's going to hurt a lot of poor people, and certainly around the world as well. The World Bank already estimated that we've put 350 million people into what they call food insecurity. 350 million. That's 3 times as many as the communists managed to kill. Maybe we can manage that in a winter. But the planet has too many people on it anyway, so, that's just poor people. Bank already estimated that we've put 350 million people into what they call food insecurity. 350 million. That's 3 times as many as the communists managed to kill. Maybe we can manage that in a winter. But the planet has too many people on it anyway, so, that's just poor people.
Yeah, so what he's basically saying there is it's not good. It's very much horrible, and with this suffering, with the gas and price and everything coming up, if you're not making good money already and kind of secure, it's going to be very difficult for you. And I think the only way, in my opinion, or one of the ways to ameliorate this, is to become more of a community as well. I think community would help out this so much, and we may need to become more of a community as the time passes and governments collapse and political ideas collapse, and we go back to just being humans. That's kind of where I see things going, or the outcome of this, maybe the Great Reset or whatever it is. Maybe it is just a community-based society. I would prefer that personally. However, I'm not a political leader, don't have any plans to be, but I think community would be a fantastic start to dealing with a lot of these insane things going on in the world just now. If you like this, if you didn't like it, please let me know. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Was I completely off? Are my beliefs and ideas wrong? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear them and have a talk about it. But as for this, thank you guys very much for watching. Like, subscribe, share. See you in the next one. I do. Thank you.